Hello! Today we're going to review everything you need to know about the X endorsement, the combined hazmat and tank vehicle endorsement on your CDL. This is one of the most demanding and highly regulated endorsements available, so let's get prepared for you to pass that exam on the first try. Here are the key questions for the CDL X endorsement exam. What does the X endorsement represent? The combined hazmat and tank vehicle endorsement. The X endorsement is not a separate test. It combines two of the most demanding endorsements into one, covering both dangerous cargo and the specialized vehicle that carries it. Let's continue. What two endorsements make up the X? H, hazmat, and N, tank vehicle. You must be fully qualified in both areas. The X endorsement holder is responsible for the cargo and the vessel carrying it. Next question. What written tests are required for the X endorsement? Both the hazmat and the tank vehicle knowledge tests. There are no shortcuts here. Two separate written exams, both of which must be passed before the endorsement is issued. Let's move on. What TSA requirement applies to the X endorsement? A full security threat assessment with fingerprinting. Because the X endorsement covers hazardous materials, the federal government requires a thorough background check through the TSA. No exceptions. Continuing. How often must the TSA assessment be renewed? Every 5 years. Mark that renewal date well in advance. A lapsed TSA assessment means an immediate loss of the hazmat, and therefore the X endorsement. Next point. What is the minimum tank capacity that triggers the N endorsement requirement? 119 gallons or more for liquids in bulk. That number is the federal threshold. Below 119 gallons, the N endorsement is not required. At or above it, it is mandatory. Let's keep going. What is the definition of a bulk package under hazmat rules? A single container with a capacity of 119 gallons or more for liquids. Bulk means the material is in one large container, not multiple smaller ones. That distinction drives both the N and H requirements. Next question. What causes liquid surge in a tank vehicle? Liquid moving in a partially filled tank. Every time you accelerate, brake, or turn, the liquid wants to keep moving. That force works against you, especially on grades and curves. Let's continue. How does liquid surge affect stopping distance? It pushes the vehicle forward when the brakes are applied. As you brake, the liquid surges forward and pushes against the front wall of the tank, extending your stopping distance beyond what you'd normally expect. Next point. What are baffles in a tank vehicle? Internal dividers that reduce forward and backward surge. Baffles are walls inside the tank with holes in them. They slow the liquid down, giving the driver better control during braking and acceleration. Let's move on. What type of surge do baffles not prevent? Side-to-side surge. Baffles only work in the direction of travel. Side-to-side movement, the kind that causes rollovers in curves, is not controlled by baffles. Continuing. What cargo is carried in smooth bore tanks with no baffles? Food-grade liquids like milk or juice. Smooth bore tanks have no internal dividers to avoid contamination and allow thorough cleaning. Surge is managed entirely through careful driving technique. Next question. What makes tank vehicles prone to rollover? A high center of gravity from the elevated liquid load. A tank full of liquid sits high and shifts its weight dynamically. Take a curve too fast and physics will take over before your steering can correct it. Let's keep going. How should an X endorsement driver handle curves? Slow well below the posted speed limit. Posted speed limits are set for passenger cars, not loaded tank vehicles. Entering a curve at the posted limit in a tank can be enough to tip it over. Next point. What is outage in a tank vehicle? Unfilled space left for liquid expansion from heat. When a liquid heats up, it expands. Without outage, a full tank could build dangerous pressure and rupture. Outage is a safety requirement, not a loading error. Let's continue. Why must some tanks be left partially unfilled? Liquids expand with heat and could rupture a full tank. Temperature changes during transit are unavoidable. Proper outage allowance is calculated for each material based on its specific expansion rate. Next question. When does a Table 1 hazmat require a placard in a tank? Any quantity. There is no minimum weight. Table 1 materials are the most dangerous. 1 package, 1 gallon, or 1 drop. If it's on board, the placard goes on. Period. Let's move on. When does a Table 2 hazmat in a tank require placarding? At 1,001 pounds or more. Table 2 materials have a threshold. Know the 1,001 pounds trigger cold. It is one of the most tested numbers on the hazmat exam. Continuing. Where must shipping papers be when the driver is in the cab? Within immediate reach, in the seat or door pouch. In an emergency, first responders need those papers in seconds. Accessibility is a legal requirement, not a courtesy. Next point, what is required of the emergency phone number on a shipping paper? It must be monitored 24 hours by someone knowledgeable about the material. That number must be answered by a real person with real knowledge, any time of day or night. A voicemail does not meet the legal standard. Let's keep going. What must be verified before loading hazmat liquid into a tank? Tank compatibility with the material and the absence of leaks. Loading an incompatible material into a tank can cause a catastrophic chemical reaction before you ever leave the loading dock. Next question. What does the retest date stamped on a tank indicate? The date by which pressure testing must be repeated. That stamp is a legal deadline. Operating a tank with an expired retest date is a federal violation regardless of the vehicle's apparent condition. Let's continue. What is the MC306 tank used for? Flammable liquids like gasoline and diesel. The MC306 is the tank you see most often at gas stations. Low profile, aluminum, designed for petroleum products at low pressure. Next point, what is the MC331 tank designed for? Liquefied gases like propane under pressure. The MC331 is a pressurized tank with a distinctive rounded shape. It carries gases that are liquefied by compression and must withstand that internal pressure at all times. Let's move on. What is the MC338 tank used for? Cryogenic liquids like liquid nitrogen at very low temperatures. Cryogenic tanks are heavily insulated to maintain extremely low temperatures. The hazard is both the intense cold and the pressure buildup if insulation is compromised. Continuing, what tank type carries acids and corrosive materials? The MC312, also called .412. Corrosive tanks are built with chemical-resistant linings and reinforced structures. The materials inside will eat through standard tank materials if containment fails. Next question. What must be inspected on a tank before each trip? Valves, fittings, tank body, and placards verified against the shipping papers. A small leak on a hazmat tank is never a small problem. Every valve and fitting must be confirmed tight before departure, every single trip. Let's keep going. What is the risk when loading a volatile hazmat liquid? Vapor buildup can create a fire or explosion hazard. Volatile liquids release flammable or toxic vapors during loading. Proper grounding, ventilation, and strict no-ignition protocols are mandatory. Next point, what does the N portion of the X endorsement specifically require? Knowledge of surge, rollover risk, and tank inspection. The N knowledge test is specifically designed to test your understanding of the unique physics and hazards of operating tank vehicles. It goes well beyond general CDL knowledge. Let's continue. What attendance rule applies to a hazmat tank in a populated area? It must be attended at all times by someone able to move it. An unattended hazmat tank in a populated area is an uncontrolled hazard. Someone who knows the material and can move the vehicle must always be present. Next question. Where is parking a loaded hazmat tank prohibited? Near flames, and within 300 feet of bridges, tunnels, or buildings. The 300-foot rule keeps a potential catastrophic release away from structures and confined spaces where vapors could accumulate to dangerous levels. Let's move on. What added risk comes from parking a hazmat tank on a grade? A brake failure could send catastrophic cargo rolling. A runaway hazmat tank on a hill is an uncontrolled disaster in motion. Always chock the wheels and use every available means to secure a parked tank on any slope. Continuing, what must a driver do when a tank leak is found during a trip? Stop safely away from people, notify emergency services, and follow the URG. Do not attempt to repair the leak yourself. Your job is to isolate the hazard and get trained responders on the scene as quickly as possible. Next point, what do the letters followed by numbers on a tank indicate? The tank meets construction and testing specifications for that cargo. That stamping is the tank's credential. It tells inspectors and first responders exactly what the tank is certified to carry and to what standards it was built. Let's keep going. What is the correct response when a tank vehicle begins to tip in a curve? Ease off the accelerator and steer gradually without hard braking. Hard braking while a tank is tipping accelerates the rollover. Smooth deceleration and gentle steering are your only tools at that moment. Use them calmly. Next question. What triggers the requirement for an N endorsement? Operating a tank with 119 gallons or more of liquid or gas in bulk. That threshold applies regardless of what the liquid is. Water, fuel, or acid. If it's 119 gallons or more in a single bulk container, you need the N. Let's continue. What distinguishes a pressurized tank from a non-pressurized one? Pressurized tanks carry gases or volatile liquids under pressure. Non-pressurized tanks carry liquids at atmospheric pressure. Understanding which type you're operating changes everything. Inspection procedures, loading protocols, and emergency response all differ significantly between the two. Next point, what is a safe haven for explosive cargo? A location approved for parking away from populated areas. Safe havens are pre-designated. You don't choose any random quiet road. The location must meet federal approval criteria for explosive cargo overnight stops. Let's move on. What extra placard does a poison inhalation hazard material require? A toxic inhalation hazard placard, in addition to the standard class placard. PIH materials get double placarding because the inhalation risk is immediate and potentially catastrophic. Both placards are required, not one or the other. Continuing, what is required in a security plan for high-consequence hazmat? Personnel security, en route security, and shipment security measures. Your security plan is a living document. Keep it current, make sure every relevant person knows it, and treat it as seriously as the cargo itself. Next question. What must the driver verify about placards before departure? That the placard matches the material class and UN number on the shipping paper. A mismatched placard is a federal violation, and in an emergency, it gives first responders the wrong information. Verify every time before you move. Let's keep going. What is the URG used for in a tank vehicle? Immediate guidance on isolation, evacuation, and response for the specific cargo. The URG is your first reference in any hazmat emergency. Know how to use it before you ever need it. Seconds matter when toxic cargo is involved. Next point, what is the penalty for hauling hazmat in a tank without a valid X endorsement? Federal and state fines, CDL disqualification, and possible criminal charges. Operating without the proper endorsement is not a paperwork technicality. It is a serious federal offense with career-ending and potentially criminal consequences. Let's continue. What does incompatible cargo mean for an X endorsement driver? Materials that react dangerously if mixed, requiring refusal to load them together. You have both the right and the legal obligation to refuse an incompatible load. No dispatcher's deadline is worth a chemical explosion. Next question. What is the maximum federal civil penalty for a serious hazmat violation? Up to $84,107 per day per violation. That number is not a typo. Hazmat compliance is not just a safety issue. At those penalty levels, it is an existential financial one too. Let's move on. What CDL class is typically needed for a large hazmat tank combination? Class A with the X endorsement. A large tank trailer is a combination vehicle. Class A covers the combination, and the X covers the hazardous contents and the tank itself. Continuing, what is the proper shipping name on a tank shipment? The official name from the hazmat table, used on all documents. No nicknames, no brand names, no internal codes. The proper shipping name must match the hazmat table exactly on every document and every placard. Next point, what is outage allowance and why does it matter? Unfilled tank space to prevent rupture from thermal expansion. Every material has a specific outage requirement based on how much it expands with heat. Ignoring it can turn a sealed tank into a pressurized bomb. Let's keep going. What is the standard retest interval for most cargo tanks? Every 5 years for visual inspection and pressure testing. The retest date stamped on the tank is your legal deadline. No retest, no legal operation, regardless of how good the tank looks on the outside. Next question. What is the first action when the low air warning activates in a hazmat tank vehicle? Pull off the road and stop immediately. A hazmat tank with failing brakes is one of the most dangerous situations on any road. There is no gradual response.